If Machiavelli were alive today, the first thing he'd think about when he woke up wouldn't be you. It would be how to control you. He would wake before the sun had even risen, because for him, the day didn't begin with light. It began with thought. The moment he opened his eyes, his mind would already be at work. Ideas left over from the night, unfinished strategies, and endless questions about human nature. Even before getting out of bed, he would try to understand the world, because in his view, before a man can control others, he must first learn to control his own mind. He would rise slowly, moving through his simple yet orderly room, feeling the power of silence. To him, silence was not emptiness, it was a field of observation. He would listen carefully to the footsteps of his servants, the tone of the wind outside, the distant murmur of a city beginning to wake, because he searched for traces of power in even the smallest details. He paid more attention to what people didn't say than to what they did. In the early hours of the morning, he would dress in his formal attire. These clothes were not just pieces of fabric, they were masks. Every button, every layer represented his role in society. Because in his eyes, people judged not the truth, but the image they saw. And for that reason, appearance was a weapon. During the first part of the day, he would usually deal with matters of state. Envoys, letters, reports. But he didn't simply read these documents. He analyzed them. He tried to sense the intention behind a sentence, the threat beneath a single word. Because to him, politics was far beyond what appeared on the surface. Even a polite letter from a king could be as harsh as a declaration of war. In his meetings with others, he would become someone else entirely. He would seem to listen, but in reality, he measured. He would smile, but inside, he calculated. He tried to understand the weaknesses, fears, and desires of the person in front of him. Because to control someone, it was enough to know what they wanted, and most people were prisoners of their own desires. At noon, he preferred to be alone. This was his time to think. He would sit at his desk, study old texts, and draw lessons from history. The rise of Rome, its fall, betrayals, and victories. Because to him, history was nothing more than a repeating cycle of human nature. People didn't change, only the stage did. Sometimes he would look out the window and watch the people walking in the streets. The urgency of a merchant, the posture of a soldier, the gaze of a beggar. Each of them told him something, because for him, everyone was a story, and every story held a lesson. To understand people was to understand the world. As evening approached, he would set aside official matters and drift into more personal thoughts. What is power? Why do people obey? Is fear stronger or love? These questions constantly circled in his mind. And more often than not, his answer was clear. People want to be loved, but they remain more loyal to what they fear. When night fell, he entered a completely different ritual. He would remove his formal clothes and take on a simpler form. This was his true self. He no longer needed a mask. He would sit at his desk and begin to write. His thoughts, his observations, his conclusions about human nature. Writing, for him, was not just expression, it was a form of control, because everything he wrote could one day shape another person's mind. As the night deepened, the world grew quieter, but his mind became louder. He thought about power games, betrayals, strategies, and most importantly, he realized how predictable people truly were. In his eyes, humans were not as complex as they believed. Their fears and desires guided them. And when those two forces were used correctly, even the most powerful kings could be controlled. Finally, as he lay down in bed, the day might seem finished. But in truth, it never was. Because for him, life was a battlefield, and every day was a new move. Even as he closed his eyes, his mind continued to work. And perhaps that was the most dangerous thing about him. He never truly rested.